Welcome to the Capitol Visitors Center of the United States Congress and to the July 9th Symposium. On behalf of each of the sponsoring organizations, the Jewish Federations of North America, the Neighborhood International Office of UN Affairs, the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington, the Lawfare Project, the Louis D. Brandeis Center for Justice under Human Rights, Emet, the Jewish Policy Center, the Israel Forever Foundation, the Institute for Law and Policy of the Hebrew University Faculty of Law, and the American Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, as well as on behalf of our law firm, Heideman, Nudelman, and Kalik. My name is Richard Heideman, and I am honored to serve as the moderator today and to have been the organizer of this symposium. I want to pay special thanks to Ariana Heideman of Starburst Communications for her superb work and diligence in seeing to it that all of the arrangements were made and the coordination. We appreciate it. We also pay special thanks to Nick Musin of the House Coalition's office for making the arrangements, and I want to specifically welcome the staff from Senator Cruz, as well as a number of members of the House who are here today. Ten years ago today, the International Court of Justice issued its advisory opinion on the legal consequences arising out of Israel's construction of its terrorism prevention security fence. That did not happen in a vacuum. We gathered together great minds, serious people, intellectuals, academics, visionaries, to share their views, to share their perspectives, to debate and to discuss, to explore and to assess, not just the last 10 years, not even necessarily just the last 66 years since Israel's establishment as a nation state, as the nation state of the Jewish people. What is very clear is that the International Court of Justice, in rendering its decision 10 years ago today, chose to attack Israel's right to defend her people, notwithstanding the fact that every nation state in the world has a primary obligation. And that primary obligation is to protect and defend her people. It is a right, it is a duty, and it is an obligation. The International Court of Justice received the request to review the case from the United Nations General Assembly on a vote taken by the General Assembly, notwithstanding the fact that the UN Security Council was seized, a legal term, seized of the issues, notwithstanding the fact that the State of Israel, the Palestinian Authority, the United States, Russia, the EU, and the Quartet, and the United Nations Security Council itself had all ratified, approved, and adopted a roadmap for peace, which laid out a path in November and December of 2003, just slightly more than 10 years ago. In gathering today, we endeavor to assess the 10 years since this unjust, inappropriate, and some say illegal, advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on the construction of Israel's terrorism prevention security fence. Let it be clear, Israel's terrorism prevention security fence is not an apartheid wall. Let it be clear, Israel's terrorism prevention security fence was not constructed for any purpose, any reason, any premeditated determination other than the protection of the people of Israel. It wasn't to separate. It wasn't to divide. It was, in fact, to see to it not that a border was built, but that protections were created. Israel, like other countries in the world, have established lines on their borders. Lines intended to bring peace. Lines intended to bring security. Lines intended to allow neighbors to live side by side in peace and security. Let it be clear. Israel's terrorism prevention security fence, which some accuse to be a concrete wall, which some like to show as only a concrete wall, just as was shown recently with the visit of the Pope. The fact of the matter is, the terrorism prevention security fence is concrete barrier for less than 5 to 6% of the total route. Let it be clear. Israel's High Court of Justice, Israel's Supreme Court, has reviewed repeatedly Israel's terrorism prevention security fence, has accepted applications for review from human rights groups and aggrieved persons, and has ordered the state of Israel to relocate that wall. And the state of Israel did so, is doing so, will do so. Let it be clear that at the time the International Court of Justice rendered its decision, it totally disregarded that just weeks earlier, Israel's High Court of Justice had ordered a rerouting of the fence, had rendered a major factual-based legal opinion that was totally disregarded by the International Court of Justice. So here we are 10 years later. And what has changed? I received a note just moments ago from my own daughter in Israel. And she says, "We hope that today will open the eyes of all those in attendance as to the need, legitimacy, and value of the security fence to protect our human rights. We are here where the rockets are falling. Please know how grateful we are to have the Iron Dome as the security fence over our skies, and can only imagine how many lives would have been lost without it in just the last 2 days alone." To Dr. Ilana Heideman, I thank you on behalf of the Israel Forever Foundation for your message. And as I ask the ambassador to join us for his remarks, I want to make it very clear the purpose of Israel's terrorism prevention security fence was to fence out, to keep out the terrorists in order to protect lives and limb and the fiber and fabric of Israel and of her democracy. The fence has clearly saved lives. Those parts that are a wall have clearly kept out the terrorists. Where we go from here in the coming decades will be determined day by day and deed by deed and word by word. Recently, we all know, 4 young people lost their lives in Israel. We would ask you all to rise for a moment of silence. In memory of the young boys murdered in Israel and all victims of terrorism,